So this is part three, and what happened after the other events that taken place in my mind. I ended up in the hospital because what was going on is I woke up one day in this time period that I said, and my family member called for an ambulance, and an ambulance showed up with a police car, and my family members were already concerned about me, I guess, because about a week prior they tried to have me go to a hospital, or a doctor's office, that is, not a hospital but a doctor's office. And I went, but I didn't sign any papers to be seen because I didn't believe I needed any help with doctors. So anyway, now fast forward a week and an ambulance shows up. I'm outside moving the metal bucket that I was using for the holy water to discard, and I was moving it, and I was walking real slow and setting it on the lawn, and all of a sudden an ambulance showed up, a cop car showed up, and I cooperated, and I got into the ambulance, and they took me to the nearest hospital. And from there, I was in a room by myself for a while, and I was laying there on the bed, and all of a sudden I had like an award ceremony going on in my head. Like I said, all these things. It was like a narrator to a ceremony, and the ceremony was acknowledging me, and there was like people cheering in it, and as the narrator was like hit on topics about me and how I did a good job doing this, doing that. I can't remember all the details, but it lasted probably 3 minutes or less, but it was long because I was just sitting there listening to it all, like wondering what this person's gonna say, because it was about me. And he just kept going and going and going, and people were cheering every once in a while in it, like happy cheer. And I was gonna get awards or something, and I was being acknowledged. And to me, it was like a federal government program or something, man. I don't know, man. To be able to talk in your mind to others that aren't present and hear others speak to you that aren't present, it's really wild. And the whole time, it's not normal, it's not natural, and especially if you don't know what's happening to you, and or why it's happening. And the thing is that it stopped. After the ceremony, like I never had these voices in my head again. And when I was at the hospital, they didn't give me medicine yet. So I can't say medicine stopped it. True story stuff. So once I was at the hospital, I was there for maybe less than 24 hours, and then they moved me to another hospital. And I'm at the other hospital, and they kept me for about 2 weeks, and I wasn't having any problems the whole time I was there. And it sucked for me to be there. And one night, I was still in my mind, and I heard like maybe 10 days later or so from the award ceremony, I heard, "My son Jesus the Nazarene, who died on the cross of Calvary for the entire effing universe's sins." But the F word was used, not effing. And I heard that, and I believe that was God, like, straightening me out, after everything, like, because I believe in God. I've had so many experiences in my life from the age of 30 all the way up. And this part one, part two, part three happened in 2023. And I think, honestly, God spoke to me, because why would it start off saying, "My son Jesus"? I wouldn't say that to myself, and I can't see another entity that isn't of God saying that, because I wasn't I was just listening. I repeated it until I learned it, what he said, memorized it. But that happened. And to go back to part one, when I mentioned, I didn't really talk a lot about this, so I'll just add, because I thought of more of the details that I missed. But like dealing with the Illuminati and the organization and talking to them mentally in my mind, and having conversation, it was like when they talked, it was like voices with different tones, pitch. Like as I moved up the chain of command, they were like different people. You could tell just by their voice. Also, what they were doing is they were deceiving. I don't know why or how they selected people, but in the public they were having certain people plugged in to where they were pretending with an AI god to be God to control them. Because, imagine, Christians believing that they have special gifts, to where they can, like, talk to one another in their minds, or they believe that God's speaking to them and God's directing them to do things. That was their whole agenda, and you'd have to look up the Illuminati to see more information on that on YouTube, I guess. I did that in my early 20s, and that's how I learned about the Illuminati, the music industry, the movie industry as well. Music and movie industry, and I learned about, I can't say the name properly, but Crowley, Astral Crowley. I learned a lot about that guy, and they're all evil or demonic from what I understand. Anyway, so they were trying to deceive people, and they were doing it, but the thing is it's not like they had the whole world or United States under their control. They had certain states and certain areas. Like, what's the point of doing this type of tricking of the person in a bad area where there's no money, or there are sinful people live in natures? So they had certain areas that they would like work in. It's really crazy, man. But they would work the technology in. And I remember talking in my mind, like calling out to see if I could talk to the governor of the state, because you got to remember, if you could talk in your mind, then you're high up in the chain of command to where leaders use this technology. It made me think, like, what about like actors and stuff too, Imagine that. Or like, it's if you could like be fed words to say, and then you say them out loud instead of having a microphone in your ear, it's really wild. Or a hearing device in your ear to say what you need to say. Anyway, that was like the AI God stuff, and I talked to the governor of the state that I lived in, supposedly, and I was trying to convince the person to turn off a 5G tower because they might have the technology and stuff, or, you're plugged in, and these people in the public believe that if you can talk to someone in your mind, then you're all Christian. And so I was talking to the governor, and I was trying to convince the person that this was false and that you need to turn off a 5G tower near my house, and let's see what happens to the public if they can still hear God or talk to one another in their minds. And she decided to do so, and then I was dealing with the Illuminati again because they were mad at me, and because she was like a public person that was a leader, and I had her do it just for like for maintenance. She said it was for maintenance is what she was going to do it for. And supposedly like the area got turned off, and the Illuminati were pissed at me, and then I convinced them just to turn off like my state, and you can do the rest whatever, but just turn off my state, because the state that I lived in, I believed at the time, was going to be like it was going to be disconnected from the United States as far as like protection by God. I mean, it sounds crazy, man. Anyway, they then from there, the Illuminati, I told them that I was being trained to do close portals with holy water, and they wanted me to video record me doing it, because they wanted to see it, because that's up their alley, as far as demon stuff. Because they're not like the greatest people, I guess, the Illuminati organization. I'm not saying it's true. It's just what things that I believed in my head. So I can't say it's true. I can't say it's not. But that's where my mind was at. So anyway, I ended up going to the hospital before I ever closed any portals, besides the one I mentioned, and being trained on how to discard holy water in a ceremonial way. And then when I brought up heaven earth and hell earth, it's like there's good areas on earth to live in your neighborhood, in your state, and then there's bad areas to live in your neighborhood or state, or your city or town or village or county. So it's like, imagine if it was mixed instead of separated, the good areas and the bad areas, but it was mixed. That was like what Revelations was going to bring. Like at least a factor of it in my head and what I was believing. Because like there was heaven earth and hell earth, and it was all on earth. And I'm just trying to give a better understanding to what I meant by heaven earth and hell earth. Because like I said, I had to like try to piece things together to better comprehend and understand like what was going on in my mind at the time. And then there was another day where I drove all like probably 25 miles or something like that. It was a good 30-minute drive, and I was driving random, and I ended up at a school that was close. It was a weekend. It was like there was no school and going on, but it was like I went and I sat there, and like I drove up. And I'd never been to this school before. It was really weird, and I pulled behind the school. They had a football field, so it must have been a high school, and I don't know why I was drawn there, but I went there, and when I got there, there was like a light pole to the football field, and then there was a cloud with a cross. It made a cross, and I was just awed by it, because what was the odds of that happening? It was just really weird. And then when I was in Heaven Court, and I was in part one, when I talked about Heaven Court, it was like during court, I would drive to certain locations that I had events take place in my past, and that was like where court would begin, and I would sit there, and it didn't happen every day. There were lots of times when I was in court, because court lasted probably 5, 8 days, 10 days, something like that. Like every day I dealt with this court stuff, and it was court against the fake. It was court, and it was the elders, like I said, they were like the judge, and then the God in training was the prosecutor side, and then I was the defendant side, as far as I was defending myself, that is. But I had like an attorney, and the God in training had an attorney representing it. So it was like, I never saw anything visually about this really, but it was really wild, man. that happened. And then, let's see, what else is there? The heaven earth, hell earth thing, though, that was really wild because, like, in the last day or two before and it was all spiritual stuff, like things that were spiritual, not physical, as far as heaven earth, hell earth, like I didn't see bad areas and I didn't see good areas. I'm just trying to give you a better understanding of what I meant by it. And then when I brought up about my soul speaking, like I said, that came from like above my waist and below my shoulders. It came out of my trunk of the body. And that voice, it was really wild because it was like, I've never heard a voice come out of my body. I mean, all these other voices and everything else were in my mind, in my brain, going on. But this one was like out of my body. And that entity that was guiding me, he no longer was guiding me because like it was an entity above him like took over, and then my because of my soul speaking, that's what I believe it was. That ain't normal at all, man. Like it was just wild, and like I said before, the soul would know more than what's going on than me. Because of my brain, I have to use my brain. But my soul wouldn't need to use a brain. It's in your body. And it spoke. It was wild. It happened like 3-4 times where it was like the entity would be talking to me and I would like be listening, obviously. And then all of a sudden my soul would say something out of my body. And like I said, every time it spoke, it seemed like I was moving up the chain of command. And that my soul supposedly was an experimental soul. It was really weird, man. Anyway, what else was there? When I said that God was retired and he was like with me or in me or something like that, it was all because the God in training, like near the end of this experience too, was found out to be doing wrong with souls for his own purposes and his own reasons, and what he wasn't like following the biblical way of things, and he was in trouble. And so like when God retired, it was originally he was going to retire, and this God in training was going to move to the next earth age and run that earth once the Bible's fulfilled and everything's done and God rebuilds a new earth. Like this God in training was going to do all that, I guess. But because he wasn't doing like the biblical way, then God who retired was going to take over. So it's like a vacation, once he gets off the throne room, I guess. I don't know. He's retired, but then when the new earth age starts, he's going to take over again. I mean, it sounds crazy, but it was just wild. It happened. I don't know, like why, but it happened. Because like the Mejladek mentioning, I went to the Bible, looked it up, and there was nothing really to read on them. And supposedly this God in training was messing with his soul for a long period of time, and like he was in jail. His soul was in jail, and there's other souls that he put in jail, and so once that was found out, and he had his own agenda with certain people on earth, their souls, when putting them in jail, that he was not fit for that position, and that the real God who retired would move to the next Earth age and take over that Earth. I also had this belief system that going on with all these experiences, because of these experiences I was having, I was thinking that the creator of God had other gods over different planets in the universe. And like we're all made in the image of God, and that God would have a house, God would have a family, God would have kids, maybe a wife, because that's how it works down here. And if we're made in the image of God, besides the fact that, I don't know, I'm just saying it's crazy. Like I said, you could take all these bits and pieces of things that I can remember from this experience, and you could make a movie out of it if you're creative enough to be able to put it in a movie format. These things all took place in my life. I'm not lying. It's crazy. I know it's crazy. I don't believe any of it, except the fact that God spoke to me at the very, very end of it all. That's about it, I guess. So if you have any questions or anything, put them in the comments, I guess. And I'll do a video on your question, I guess, if you have anything about what I shared in part 1, part 2, and part 3. Thanks.